The false victory. The crystalline spires of Elysium Station glittered against the backdrop of stars, a beacon of civilization nestled in the heart of the Andromeda Arm. Celebration pods zipped between its massive habitation rings, trails of luminescent particles marking their paths like the wake of exotic fish. Inside the Grand Forum, representatives from a dozen species mingled beneath floating holographic displays, showing the recent battle in glorious detail. Admiral Thrixka, his 4 arms adorned with the ceremonial bands of the Viridian High Command, raised a glass of fermented nectar. His scaled skin refracted light as he moved, casting prismatic patterns across the gathering. To victory, he declared, voice resonant through specialized vocal chambers. The Shroud Menace has been vanquished. Cheers erupted from the assembled dignitaries. The Cygna representatives pulsed with bioluminescent approval, their translucent bodies flaring bright blue. The Morwen delegation stamped their hooved feet in traditional celebration. Even the normally stoic Akurans clicked their mandibles in what passed for jubilation among their kind. The celebration was well-earned. For 3 cycles, the Shroud Armada had cut a path of destruction through Alliance space. Worlds burned, stations fell silent, and millions perished under their relentless assault. But now the broken remains of their fleet drifted through the void around Acheron Prime, a monument to Alliance superiority. At least, that was the official narrative. Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen stood alone at the far edge of the gathering, nursing a glass of synthetic alcohol. Her dark uniform, practical rather than ceremonial, stood in stark contrast to the ornate regalia around her. As the sole human representative invited to the victory celebration, she found herself oddly detached from the festivities. Not joining in the revelry, Commander. The voice belonged to Zorn, a Cygnar diplomat whose shimmering form approached with undulating grace. Just observing, Maya replied, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. The hologram showed the Shroud fleet's retreat in real time, their ships breaking formation and vanishing into the darkness of space. A habit of your species, I've noticed, Zorn commented, his voice bubbling through the translator. Always watching, always analyzing. The war is over, Commander. Even humans must celebrate sometimes. Maya offered a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Old habits. The truth was more complex. Something about the Shroud's retreat pattern bothered her. The alien vessels hadn't scattered in disarray as a defeated force should. Instead, they had withdrawn with precision, each ship maintaining optimal defensive positioning even as they retreated. It wasn't a rout, it was a strategic redeployment. Her wrist communicator vibrated subtly. A message scrolled across its surface. Rendezvous point exihio. Authorization Foinex. Maya's expression remained neutral, but her pulse quickened. Whisper protocol was only activated when human intelligence detected Level 1 threats, existential dangers to human space or allied territories. Whatever her superiors had discovered about the Shroud, it was serious enough to mobilize their shadow assets. If you'll excuse me, she said to Zorn, duty calls. The Cygnar diplomat's bioluminescence dimmed slightly in what might have been disappointment. Of course, you humans, and your endless duties. Perhaps someday you'll learn to appreciate the moment. Maya nodded and slipped away from the celebration, her footsteps silent against the polished floor. She navigated through service corridors, avoiding the main thoroughfares where revelers continued their celebrations. At a maintenance airlock, she boarded an unmarked shuttle, its systems already running. Authorization: Chen, Maya. Lieutenant Commander. Echo 794 Delta. The shuttle's AI acknowledged her credentials with a soft chime. As she strapped into the pilot's seat, the vessel disengaged from Elysium Station, its departure masked by the steady stream of celebration traffic. Once clear of the station's security perimeter, Maya engaged the quantum drive. Stars streaked into lines as the shuttle accelerated beyond conventional physics, heading toward a destination not found on any Alliance star chart. Hours later, she arrived at Echo Point, a derelict mining outpost orbiting a nameless brown dwarf. To Alliance sensors, it appeared abandoned, radiation-soaked, and worthless. To humanity, it was one of dozens of black sites scattered throughout Allied space. The shuttle docked automatically, and Maya disembarked into a sterile corridor. Security scanners confirmed her identity at 3 separate checkpoints before she reached the command center. Inside, a dozen officers hunched over displays, their faces illuminated by the glow of tactical readouts. Admiral James Harker stood at the center, his weathered face grim as he studied a 3-dimensional projection of space surrounding Acheron Prime. At 63, with gray hair cropped military short, Harker was a relic of the Earth-Mars conflicts, a veteran commander who'd fought in humanity's last intra-species war before first contact. "Commander Chen," he acknowledged without looking up. "Good of you to join us." "Sir," Maya saluted crisply. "What's the situation?" Harker gestured to the display. "The celebration is premature. The Shroud aren't defeated. They're regrouping." The hologram zoomed out to reveal a wider section of space. Red markers indicated Shroud ship movements, forming a clear pattern invisible to those without access to humanity's secret sensor network. The alien vessels weren't scattering. They were converging on a position in the Kessler Nebula, just beyond Alliance scanning range. "How do we know this?" Maya asked, though she suspected the answer. "Project Sentinel," Harker replied, referring to the microsatellites humanity had secretly deployed throughout Alliance space over the past decade. Officially, they were weather and communications relays. Unofficially, they formed the most comprehensive surveillance network in known space. "The Shroud are amassing their forces here," Harker continued, highlighting a region within the nebula. "Analysis suggests they're preparing for a counteroffensive. Their withdrawal wasn't a retreat. It was a tactical repositioning to draw Alliance forces into a false sense of security." Maya studied the projection. "Have you alerted the Alliance?" "And tell them what?" "That we've been spying on their territories for years. That we've deployed unauthorized military hardware throughout their sovereign space." Harker shook his head. "Even if they believed us, the diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic." "So what's the plan?" Harker's expression hardened. "Operation Cerberus." Maya's eyes widened. Cerberus was a contingency plan so classified that most of Earth's military leadership didn't know it existed. It involved assets and capabilities that humanity had concealed from their allies since joining the Galactic community. "The Argus fleet?" she asked quietly. Harker nodded. "All 7 battle groups. We're bringing them online now." On a secondary display, Maya watched as status indicators changed from dormant to active. Deep within asteroid fields, buried in gas giant moons, and hidden in artificial debris fields, humanity's secret fleet was awakening. For decades, Earth had maintained a public face of minimal military capability. Outdated ships, modest weapons, and limited personnel. Their contribution to the Alliance had been positioned as logistical and intelligence support rather than frontline combat assets. But in secret, humanity had been building. Learning from each alien technology they encountered, adapting and improving upon designs, creating hybrid systems that no single species would have conceived. The result was the Argus fleet, vessels unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen, crewed by soldiers trained for missions the Alliance would never sanction. "We were right to keep these ships hidden," Maya murmured, watching as more systems came online across the fleet. "Right or wrong doesn't matter now," Harker replied. "What matters is stopping the Shroud before they hit Alliance space again. We've run the simulations. Without our intervention, they'll break through within 48 hours. Billions will die." Maya nodded, understanding the impossible choice before them. Reveal humanity's deception and potentially fracture the Alliance, or remain hidden and watch their allies perish. "Your orders, sir." Harker's gaze was steel. "Deploy to the Artemis. You'll serve as XO under Captain Reyes. The battle group will position at these coordinates, ready to intercept the Shroud's main thrust when they emerge from the nebula. Maya accepted the data chip he offered, containing her mission parameters and authentication codes. And the Alliance. Let them celebrate their victory, Harker said, his voice heavy with the weight of command. We'll deal with the consequences after we've saved them from annihilation. As Maya prepared to depart, a communication officer approached. Sir, we're detecting movement from the nebula. The Shroud are mobilizing earlier than predicted. Harker's jaw tightened. How long? 24 hours, sir. Maybe less. The Admiral turned to the assembled officers. Then we have no time to waste. Activate all Argus units. Deploy battle groups to defensive positions. As of this moment, Operation Cerberus is live. Throughout hidden bases and secret shipyards across human and Alliance space, klaxons sounded. Crews raced to battle stations aboard vessels the galaxy didn't know existed. Weapons systems charged, engines warmed, and stealth fields disengaged. Humanity was going to war, and the Alliance would never see them the same. The catch was that deployment required precise calibration from within the effect radius. Someone had to physically carry the device to the target and activate it manually. It was, in essence, a suicide mission. Acknowledged, Chief, Rise replied, her voice betraying nothing of the weight of this exchange. Prep the package. We'll be in position in 2 minutes, 8 seconds. As the Artemis accelerated toward the failing Shroud weapon, the battle around them intensified. The remaining enemy vessels, now aware of the human threat, concentrated their fire on the approaching ship. Energy beams and organic projectiles lanced through space, impacting against the Artemis' shields. Shields at 63%, reported defensive systems. Regeneration cycles keeping pace with damage for now. Evasive pattern Delta, Rise ordered. Keep our ventral armor facing their main battery groups. The massive warship twisted through space with surprising agility, its design prioritizing maneuverability over the ponderous stability preferred by Alliance vessels. Advanced inertial dampeners allowed the crew to withstand forces that would have killed most Alliance species, letting the Artemis perform combat maneuvers that seemed impossible for a ship of its size. On the tactical display, Maya watched as the other human battle groups engaged the main Shroud fleet, now fully emerged from the nebula. The initial surprise advantage was fading as the enemy adapted, but humanity's diverse arsenal continued to sow confusion among the collective consciousness. Unable to predict what weapons would be deployed next, the Shroud couldn't evolve effective countermeasures fast enough. 1 minute to deployment range, Park announced. In engineering, Chief Takahashi secured the ORP-HEUS device to his environment suit. The package, about the size of a small backpack, contained technology that violated several Alliance treaties on weapons research and development. Its very existence represented humanity's willingness to explore scientific avenues others had deemed too dangerous to pursue. Package is prepped and calibrated, Takahashi reported. Ready for deployment. Understood, Rise replied. Shuttle Bay 2, prepare for emergency launch. The Artemis shuddered as a particularly powerful Shroud weapon impacted its starboard shields. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. Shield Grid 7 collapsing, called defensive systems, rerouting power from secondary systems. 30 seconds to deployment range, Park updated, his voice tight with concentration as he maneuvered the massive vessel through increasingly dense enemy fire. Maya watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Shroud weapon's energy signature was becoming increasingly erratic, quantum fluctuations spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Captain, Volkov called urgently, the containment field is failing faster than predicted. New estimate to catastrophic failure is 90 seconds. Reyes's expression hardened. Mr. Park, redline the engines. Get us there now. Aye, Captain. The navigation officer bypassed safety protocols, pushing the Artemis propulsion systems beyond design tolerances. The ship surged forward, structural integrity alarms blaring as the frame strained under forces it wasn't meant to withstand. In engineering, Backup crews rushed to reinforce critical systems, manually venting excess heat and rerouting power to prevent cascading failures. Deployment range achieved, Park announced as the Artemis skimmed the outer perimeter of the destabilizing Shroud weapon's energy field. Launch shuttle, Rise ordered. In Shuttle Bay 2, Chief Takahashi sealed his helmet and boarded a stripped-down craft barely larger than an escape pod. With the ORPAUS package secured, he took manual control, bypassing the standard launch sequence. Shuttle away, reported Flight Control. On the tactical display, a tiny indicator separated from the Artemis, accelerating toward the massive, failing Shroud weapon. The distance was small by cosmic standards, barely 20 kilometers, but with energy fluctuations increasing by the second, it might as well have been light years. 60 seconds to containment failure, Volkov updated, her voice grim. The shuttle weaved through streams of disruptive energy, its small size and Takahashi's piloting skill keeping it intact where larger vessels would have been torn apart. The chief engineer pushed the craft to its limits, ignoring warning indicators that flashed across his console. Approaching target, Takahashi reported, his voice calm despite the circumstances. 30 seconds to deployment position. As the crew carried out her orders, Maya accessed her station's secure database, reviewing everything humanity knew about the Shroud. The information was sparse. They had appeared at the edge of known space 3 years ago, destroying a remote Alliance outpost without warning or apparent provocation. Since then, they had advanced methodically through Alliance territory, consuming resources and leaving only destruction in their wake. Attempts at communication had failed. Diplomatic overtures went unanswered. The Shroud seemed interested only in conquest and annihilation. What little intelligence existed suggested they were a collective consciousness operating through biomechanical vessels, living ships with technological components grafted onto organic substrates. They adapted quickly, learning from each encounter and evolving countermeasures against Alliance weapons. Maya's research was interrupted by a priority communication from Admiral Harker. His holographic image appeared on the command display, expression grim. Captain Rice, we've detected anomalous energy signatures from within the nebula. Analysis suggests the Shroud are deploying a new weapon system, something our models can't identify. Capabilities, Rice asked. Unknown, but energy output is massive. Whatever it is, they're bringing it to bear against Alliance space. Harker's image flickered slightly. I'm accelerating the timetable. All battle groups are authorized to engage the moment the Shroud exit the nebula. Primary objective remains protecting Alliance population centers. And secondary objectives, sir? Maya asked. Harker's gaze shifted to her. Survival, Commander. This is no longer about maintaining our cover. It's about stopping an extinction-level event. He paused, then added, Cerberus protocol has been upgraded to Omega status. You're authorized to use everything in your arsenal. The communication ended, leaving a heavy silence on the bridge. Omega status meant unrestricted warfare. All experimental systems, all classified weapons, everything humanity had developed in secret was now cleared for deployment. Well, Rice said quietly, it seems we're about to show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. She turned to her crew. Battle stations. Prepare for combat operations. Throughout the Artemis and across the 6 other battle groups, klaxons sounded. Crew members rushed to their posts. Weapon systems charged to full capacity. Experimental technologies, hidden even from most of the ship's own crews, were brought online by officers with specialized clearance. In the engineering section, Chief Engineer Takahashi supervised the activation of the ship's primary weapon, the Mobius Array, a gravitational manipulation system that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. The technology had been reverse-engineered from a combination of Signer gravity wells and Acuren phase technology, neither of which their creators had ever imagined could be weaponized. Power at 70% and rising, reported Lieutenant Park, monitoring the array's containment field, quantum stability holding at acceptable levels. Takahashi nodded, watching as the array's energy signature climbed steadily. Keep the harmonics balanced. If the resonance frequency shifts above 0.3%, initiate emergency shutdown. The Mobius array was just one of dozens of technological advances humanity had developed or adapted from their allies without sharing the results. Each Argus vessel carried different experimental systems, making them a floating arsenal of the unexpected. On the bridge, Maya accessed the tactical database, reviewing battle plans that had been meticulously crafted over years, but never tested in actual combat. The simulation showed favorable outcomes against standard shroud tactics, but the unknown energy signature Harker had mentioned introduced a critical variable. 12 hours to contact, Zhang announced, updating the countdown. Reyes opened a fleet-wide channel. All hands, this is the captain. In 12 hours, we will engage an enemy that threatens not just our allies, but potentially all sentient life in this sector. For years, we've trained in secret, developed technologies in shadow, and prepared for a moment we hoped would never come. She paused, letting her words resonate through the ship. Today, humanity steps out of the shadows. Today, we show the galaxy what we are capable of when threatened. Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for every species that calls this region of space home. Another pause. Some of you may have reservations about our methods, about the secrecy we've maintained. I understand those concerns. But remember this. Sometimes the greatest protection comes from the threat others don't see coming. Throughout the ship, crew members listened in silence, the weight of what was to come settling on their shoulders. We are the shield they never knew they had, Rise continued. And after today, they will never forget us. Prepare yourselves. Rise out. As the communication ended, Maya caught the captain's eye. Inspiring words. Rise offered a thin smile. Let's hope they're prophetic as well. She studied the tactical display, where the red markers of the Shroud Fleet continued their inexorable approach. Because in 12 hours, the galaxy changes forever, one way or another. Across the void, hidden within the swirling gases of the Kessler Nebula, the Shroud Armada advanced. Their vessels pulsed with eldritch energies, biomechanical components shifting and reconfiguring as they prepared for their assault. At their center, a massive structure took shape, a weapon of devastating potential, designed to break the Alliance's remaining resistance in a single, overwhelming strike. They had no way of knowing that humanity was waiting, hidden in the darkness between stars, ready to reveal the truth they had concealed for decades. Earth was not the minor player it had pretended to be. It was a sleeping giant, about to awaken with terrible fury. And the Shroud were about to learn why even the ancient spacefaring races of old had given wide berth to the small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system at the edge of the galactic arm. The Shroud returns. The Kessler Nebula's edge glowed with unnatural light as the first Shroud vessels emerged from its swirling clouds. Unlike their previous formations, these advanced ships moved in a strange, oscillating pattern, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with vermilion energy that left spectral trails in the void. Contact, announced Zhang, his voice tense but controlled. Shroud Vanguard units emerging from the nebula. Configuration differs from previous encounters. Biomass ratio appears significantly higher. On the Artemis tactical display, the enemy vessels appeared as distorted silhouettes, their shapes in constant flux as organic components shifted and reconfigured. Behind them, larger signatures indicated the approach of capital ships, and at the fleet's center, the massive unknown weapon that had triggered Omega status. Captain Rice studied the formation with narrowed eyes. They've evolved again, adapted their biology to counter the weapons the Alliance used in the last engagement. Standard procedure for the Shroud, Maya noted. After each battle, surviving units transmit combat data to the collective. Future generations incorporate physiological changes to resist whatever hurt them. Which is why our first strike needs to be decisive. Rice turned to communications. Status of Alliance forces. Lieutenant Nassar checked his readouts. Still at minimal alert, they've detected the nebula disturbance, but are classifying it as a spatial anomaly. Defense grids remain at standard power. No fleet mobilization orders detected. Rice shook her head in disbelief. They're completely unprepared. She activated the command channel. All battle groups maintain stealth protocols. Let the Vanguard clear the nebula completely before engagement. We need clean firing solutions on their capital ships and that new weapon. Acknowledgements came in from the other 6 battle group commanders. Throughout human space, cloaked vessels held position, weapon systems primed and targeting arrays locked on the emerging threat. The Shroud Vanguard continued to advance, spreading outward in a spherical formation that would eventually envelop the nearest Alliance outposts. Behind them, the nebula churned as larger vessels pushed through the gaseous medium, their massive forms distorting space itself. Energy spike. Zhang called out suddenly. The weapon is activating. The tactical display flashed a warning as readings went off the scale. At the center of the Shroud formation, a structure like an enormous flowering organism unfurled, its petals extending to reveal a pulsating core of impossible physics. Analysis, Rise demanded. Science officer Dr. Elena Volkov frowned at her readings. It's generating a quantum resonance field unlike anything we've encountered. The energy signature suggests it's targeting subspace itself, the medium through which faster-than-light travel occurs. Maya understood immediately. They're trying to collapse the jump corridors. If they succeed, Alliance worlds would be isolated from each other. Rice finished. No reinforcements, no evacuations, no communication beyond light speed. Each system would have to fight alone. It was a strategy of terrifying elegance. The Alliance's strength came from its unity, its ability to coordinate defenses across vast distances. By severing the FTL connections between systems, the Shroud would transform a unified opposition into isolated pockets of resistance, easily overwhelmed one by one. Time to activation, Rise asked. Based on energy buildup, 4 minutes, 17 seconds, Volkov replied. Rise made her decision instantly. We can't wait for their full emergence. Target that weapon now. She opened the fleet channel. All battle groups, this is Artemis Actual. The Shroud are deploying a subspace disruptor. Omega priority target. Engage immediately. I repeat, engage immediately. Throughout human space, the hidden fleet sprang to life. Stealth fields dropped as power was diverted to weapons and drives. On the bridge of the Artemis, Maya watched as indicators changed from concealment to combat status. Mobius array at full charge, reported engineering. Targeting solutions locked. All vessels, fire on my mark. Rise commanded, her voice level despite the enormity of what was about to occur. 3, 2, 1, mark. Across the void, 7 battle groups of ships that officially didn't exist unleashed weapons the Alliance had never seen. From the Artemis, a coruscating beam of twisted spacetime erupted from its spinal mount, the Mobius array bending reality itself as it reached across the distance toward the Shroud weapon. The Thermopyla group deployed gravitational lances, invisible forces that compressed matter to the point of molecular collapse. The Leonidas vessels fired quantum disruption torpedoes that phased in and out of conventional space until impact, making them impossible to track or intercept. Each battle group utilized different technologies, different approaches, the full spectrum of humanity's secret arsenal brought to bear simultaneously. The Shroud, for all their adaptive capabilities, had never encountered these weapons before. Their vanguard units reacted with visible confusion, biomechanical systems attempting to analyze and counter threats they couldn't comprehend. The first wave of human fire reached the Shroud formation, and the void lit up with devastation. Ships that had shrugged off Alliance energy weapons disintegrated under gravitational compression. Vessels that had evolved thick armor against kinetic impacts were shredded by phase-shifting munitions that appeared inside their hulls. At the formation's center, the massive weapon took multiple direct hits, its delicate structure buckling under forces it wasn't designed to withstand. The pulsating core flickered, energy patterns becoming erratic as containment fields failed. Direct hits confirmed, John reported, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from his voice. 87% of targeted Vanguard units destroyed or disabled. Shroud weapon showing critical system failures. The bridge crew allowed themselves a moment of hope, but it was short-lived. The remaining Shroud vessels, though clearly damaged, were already adapting. Their hulls rippled and shifted, biological components reconfiguring to create new defensive structures. They're evolving in real time, Volkov noted with professional fascination mixed with horror. The collective is sharing adaptive data faster than we anticipated. More ominously, the damaged weapon at the fleet's center hadn't deactivated. Instead, its energy signature was becoming more unstable, readings fluctuating wildly across the spectrum. That doesn't look like a controlled shutdown, Maya observed, studying the data. More like a cascade failure. Volkov's expression turned grave. If the containment field collapses entirely while the core is still active, the resulting detonation would tear a hole in subspace across half the sector. Rice finished. How long? 3 minutes, possibly less. The decay rate is accelerating. Rice didn't hesitate. All battle groups maintain fire on Shroud combat vessels. Artemis will handle the weapon. She turned to navigation. Lieutenant Park, get us within deployment range of the weapon. Maximum burn. Aye, Captain. Park's fingers danced across his console, plotting a course that would take them perilously close to the failing Shroud device. Maya understood Reyes's intention immediately. The ORPAEUS package. Reyes nodded grimly. It's what it was designed for. She activated a secure channel to engineering. Chief Takahashi, prep ORPAEUS for manual deployment. I need a volunteer. There was a brief pause before Takahashi's voice came through, steady and resolved. No need for volunteers, Captain. I wrote the deployment protocols. It should be me. The ORPAEUS package was perhaps the most classified technology aboard the Artemis, an emergency containment system designed to neutralize exotic energy events. It worked by creating a localized pocket of altered spacetime, essentially sealing the target in a bubble where normal physics didn't apply. The energy would dissipate harmlessly within the bubble rather than exploding outward. The hidden fleet. The Artemis hung suspended in the shadow of Thanatos, a dead moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of the Kessler Nebula. Unlike the sleek, almost artistic vessels of the Alliance races, the human warship was a study in brutal efficiency. No sweeping lines or decorative elements adorned its hull, only armor plating, weapon emplacements, and sensor arrays arranged in overlapping fields of coverage. Maya Chen moved through its corridors with purpose, crew members snapping to attention as she passed. The ship's interior matched its exterior philosophy, functional, redundant, and designed for combat rather than comfort. Exposed conduits ran along bulkheads, manual override systems paralleled automated ones, and every compartment could be sealed and pressurized independently. The bridge was a hemisphere of holographic displays and hardened control stations. Captain Alina Reyes occupied the command chair at its center, her attention fixed on tactical readouts. At 45, Reyes had the distinction of being the youngest officer to command an Argus-class vessel, a testament to both her tactical brilliance and the urgency of their current situation. Commander Chen, Reyes acknowledged without looking up. Welcome aboard. Captain, Maya replied, taking the XO station to Reyes's right. Status report. Battle group is at 97% readiness. Stealth systems are optimal. We're receiving data feeds from Sentinel satellites tracking Shroud movement in the nebula. Rice finally turned to face her new executive officer. You've been with the Alliance delegation. What's their posture? Celebratory, Maya answered. They're convinced the Shroud are defeated. Defense grids are at minimal power, patrol ships have been recalled for victory ceremonies, and civilian traffic has resumed normal patterns. Reyes's expression hardened. They've lowered their shields while the enemy is still in the field. Classic mistake. On the main tactical display, red markers indicated the Shroud fleet's position within the nebula. Unlike conventional matter, the Shroud's biomechanical vessels were difficult to track through the ionized gases, but humanity's Sentinel network used quantum entanglement sensors to penetrate the interference. "They're forming up in attack posture," noted Tactical Officer Weizong, his fingers manipulating the holographic interface. Escort vessels in forward screen formation, capital ships in echelon behind. Classic hammer and anvil configuration. "Time to emergence?" Rise asked. 18 hours, 17 minutes, based on current movement patterns, John replied. Rise turned to communications. Status of the other battle groups. Lieutenant Karim Nassar consulted his display. Thermopylae Group is in position near the Helix Gate. Leonidas Group has deployed along the perimeter vector. Achilles, Ajax, and Hector groups are maintaining equidistant holding patterns around the Alliance core worlds. Odysseus Group is our reserve force, positioned at the L4 point of Thanatos. And Alliance forces. The main fleet remains docked at Elysium Station. Patrol groups are scattered but under strength. Most of their capital ships are undergoing routine maintenance cycles. They took advantage of the lull after the victory. Nassar's tone made clear his opinion of that decision. Maya studied the strategic situation with a growing sense of unease. The Alliance was completely unprepared for what was coming. Even if they mobilized now, they couldn't establish an effective defensive perimeter before the Shroud struck. "We should warn them," she said quietly. Reyes gave her a measured look. "Those aren't our orders, Commander. With respect, Captain, we're talking about billions of lives. If we alert them now, they might have time to what? Panic. Demand explanations for why we have a fleet they never knew about. Question every aspect of our involvement in the Alliance." Reyes shook her head. Admiral Harker's orders were clear. "We remain hidden until engagement is necessary." Maya wanted to argue further, but knew it would be futile. The decision had been made at levels far above her pay grade. Humanity would protect the Alliance, but on their terms, revealing their strength only when absolutely necessary. "Understood, Captain." Reyes's expression softened slightly. "I don't like it either, Chen. But sometimes the best way to protect people is from the shadows." The tactical display updated, showing new movement patterns among the Shroud vessels. John frowned as he analyzed the data. "Captain, they're accelerating their timetable. New emergence estimate is 14 hours, 43 minutes. Reyes straightened in her chair. "Alert all battle groups. Bring weapon systems to standby. I want firing solutions calculated for every Shroud capital ship the moment they exit the nebula." On the Artemis bridge, the crew watched in tense silence. Maya found herself holding her breath as the tiny shuttle closed the final distance to the enormous Shroud construct. "Telemetry is degrading," John noted. "We're losing sensor lock due to interference." "Stay with him as long as you can," Reyes ordered. The shuttle disappeared into a swirling vortex of energy at the weapon's core. Communications reduced to bursts of static interspersed with fragments of Takahashi's voice. "In position. Activating. Sequence. Calibrating." Then nothing. 20 seconds to containment failure, Volkov announced, her eyes fixed on readings that continued to spike toward critical levels. On the tactical display, the energy signature of the Shroud weapon pulsed one final time, reaching a crescendo that threatened to overwhelm the Artemis' sensors. Then, impossibly, it began to collapse inward. "The ORPAEUS is working," Volkov reported, disbelief and hope mingling in her voice. "The energy is being contained and redirected." Where moments before a catastrophic explosion had seemed inevitable, now a strange implosion was occurring. The Shroud weapon's massive structure folded in on itself, collapsing into an ever smaller space as the ORPAEUS package created its pocket of altered physics. "Containment holding," John confirmed. "Energy levels decreasing." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly silenced by Reyes's raised hand. "Chief Takahashi." she asked communications. Lieutenant Nassar shook his head. No signal, Captain.